Hi, I'm Jim Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. The game we're looking at today is another English, and it's topical because it follows quite closely Giri-Grischuk from the candidates. In the candidates, Giri played a novelty 1093 in the English, which looks a bit like a reversed Alekhine-style. AlphaZero got the same position against Stockfish in a previously unpublished AlphaZero game, and AlphaZero also played a novelty, a different one. AlphaZero played knight e1. So we're going to look at the positions arising from this, and actually at one moment we get to a very deceptive position because white has 2 pawns in the center, and black has a good blockade on those pawns. And it looks to both engines like we get a very equal position. However, AlphaZero builds up slowly and keeps improving its position and gets a win. The interesting thing is that when Stockfish had the position for white against Fat Fritz, it also managed to win for the white side. So it's a very interesting middle game position where you can build up the attack for white.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting example of just trying out engine matches just at home, just to test out what or how good a position actually is. Yeah, this seems to be one that gives interesting results. So let's have a look at it. Okay, let's take a look at this. So 1c4, that's what we have, and then afterwards Stockfish played 1e5. 1c4 were the only moves that were specified for both engines. After 1c4, both were on their own. AlphaZero plays its favourite move, 2g3, and here Stockfish tries 2c6, which is a pretty popular way of actually taking this G3 system head on. I mean, white's fighting for the central light squares, and black's just going to try and set up D4, D7 to D5 and get a double pawn center. Now we've seen something similar in an earlier video. It was the one about smooth endgame play from AlphaZero, and AlphaZero played a line with D4. Which is probably the main line. But here AlphaZero plays a secondary line, actually, which is also very interesting. And that's this move 3 knight f3, which...
now, keep an eye on that knight. It's going to play 7 moves in the opening here.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very active knight, this one. You'll notice again that, we looked at, in a very recent video as well, we looked at a line where AlphaZero played c4, e5, knight f3. And we called that an improved Alekhine. I mean, this is again very similar to an Alekhine's defense, where the knight is attacking a central pawn, then getting chased around, and well, white's claiming that that the advance of those central pawns is a weakness and a target rather than disruption. And as always, it's a bit of both. So e4, knight d4, d5 takes, queen takes. This has been quite popular at high level. Quite a few players have tried this with white, and of course what we're following here is the game Giri-Grischuk from the recent candidates, one of the later rounds just before the candidates were stopped. So knight c2, most common retreat for the knight. Yeah, you have to decide between c2, b3. c2 feels like it's got a few more prospects than b3. Knight f6. Bishop knight c3, queen e5, bishop g2.
Black play e3.
Yeah, this is always an idea actually. In general, white's just going to play f3, and then you'll have to take the pawn, get developed, and then I'll play knight c3, e4, bishop g2, and develop. It's actually helped white rather than black. It's
her queen's out too early, then it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, you just haven't quite got enough pieces really to support this. But it's not terrible for black. But it's probably just a little bit early. So knight f6, knight c3, queen e5, bishop g2, knight a6, castles, and bishop e7. It's an interesting position here, quite unbalanced. I mean, black's got that advanced pawn on e4, which is really restricting the bishop on g2, and but that pawn on e4 is also a weakness. It's obviously close to the white position, so not too difficult to attack, and of course it's supported by the queen on e5, which is well, not going to be particularly stable defender, because I mean, after all, there's a lot of minor pieces in there that could attack the queen. White's big dilemma is what to do with that knight on c2, which has made 3 moves already, but is not really doing an awful lot from c2. So White's tried moves like d4 and d3. That's been done. Actually, I think both Grischuk and Giri have had games themselves with the black side against those 2 moves. In the candidates, Giri played knight e3, and Grischuk reacted h5. Just not surprised to see that type of move anymore at any level, at any position. And here Giri played an interesting idea. It was d4 takes, and I haven't seen this one before. He took with a pawn. I guess that's maybe influenced by that move h5, that maybe Giri thought that it should be taking some decisive action. But the idea is very interesting, just to play a quick d4 to d5, and break open the centre. I mean, it didn't work out that great. I think Grischuk played some good moves here. This queen d4 to g4 was quite unusual, just trying to swap off the queens. So it wasn't too much at all for White, but a very interesting idea. And well, you can see that the Giri there is trying to get that knight on c2 active. Well, it just struck me when I saw it, because knew about this AlphaZero set of games, where it didn't play knight e3, but it did try and get its knight active. It played this move knight e1. What's the idea of that? Well, the idea is that White's going to attack that e4 pawn with d3, or maybe play d4 to attack the thing supporting the e4 to e4 pawn, or f3. And when black captures, then that white knight is actually going to get active, either on d3 or on f3. Yeah, I mean, for example, if black plays castles here, then white will play d4, takes, knight takes, queen h5, and then something like e4. It's not huge, but it is a little edge for white. And the white pieces look quite.
That one could just go into an endgame with queen takes queen.
Exactly. Yeah, I can just show you that one. d4 takes e4. Yeah, if you want to, you could play queen takes queen. I'll go rook takes queen. And I mean, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and play h3 and bishop e3, b3, and then play rook d2, rook d1. And just have a bit of extra space, and also black's kingside majority is easier to activate in these positions than black's queenside majority. Just because this bishop is here, just sort of lurking and attacking the pawns on c6 and b7 in the end. So these are quite.
White would be very happy with this.
White would be fairly happy with this. It's this is the sort of thing you often aim for in the English. It's you're not attacking the black position from the start with d4 or e4. You're aiming for some sort of pluses. So Stockfish was a lot more ambitious, actually. In this game, we're going to have a look at what it played, bishop f5. Well, we might have a look in the next video. The move bishop g4, which it also played in this position. But bishop f5 is very logical, just protecting e4 with everything black has. So after d4, queen e6, and then f3. So it's worth pointing out there was another game here between Fat Fritz and Stockfish, Fat Fritz being white in this position. And White played here an interesting idea that's just worth showing, because it crops up in a lot of sub-variations. This move queen b3, just to exchange off the queen on e6 and thus loosen black's control of e4. So then we've got queen takes b3, a takes b3, h6 happened. And now this really nice maneuver, rook a5 to e5, just trying to grab that pawn on e4. Well, it didn't quite turn out that you could do that because the rook on e5 was rather weak. But Fat Fritz actually ended up just sacrificing the exchange in this position. I'll just play a couple more moves. King b8, bishop d2. And, actually neither Stockfish, which was playing black in this position, nor Fat Fritz were, amazingly wowed about white's position. But it was, just balanced, according to them. In actual fact, in this game, Fat Fritz managed to defeat Stockfish, which on my hardware, I've got pretty good hardware for Stockfish. My graphics card is not that high end, to say the least. So I'm not that great for the neural net. So yeah, when it wins games like that, you're always quite interested. Again, it's one of those positions where with white you can see all sorts of nice possibilities for expansion on the king side, and with h4, g4, that sort of thing, and eventually the center as well. And with black, you're you're really relying on maybe trying to get in c5 at a good appropriate moment at some stage. But the pieces don't have that many great outposts. So, very interesting idea. And, well, again, this is the type of thing that's happening in this position, just with white, you're having to be just that little bit more creative, just to, just to try and make something of these positions. But the possibilities are there. But AlphaZero didn't do that. AlphaZero played f3. And then e takes f3 happened, knight f3, and castles. So I think we're up to 6 moves already with the knight, and now we play a 7th, knight g5. So queen d7 and e4. And after bishop g4, can you guess what white played? Of course,
it's got to be the knight.
It's got to be the knight move. Knight f3, knight f3. That's the one. Rook e8, bishop e3. So this is a very interesting position again. I mean, if you see the game from the start, it's all these twists and turns where black's trying to occupy the center, white's knight gets kicked around by black's central pawns. But now it's all come around, and white's ended up with the 2 central pawns, and black doesn't have them. You've always got to be a bit careful when you get these sort of positions from an English opening or a Reti, this sort of quiet sort of opening, because when you get a double pawn center from a 1d4 e4 opening, that's normally much earlier in the game, and that normally carries a lot of attacking chances, often because the opponent isn't fully developed. But in these sort of openings like the English, you get a double pawn center a lot later, and so black's fully mobilized. And so black's really got the time, black's got its king safe and its pieces are already pointing at the center. So it can be a lot more difficult, to really keep it together. And, you notice in the game, there's you need to use a few tactics in order to keep it together. Here, AlphaZero is playing the queen out to a4, so keeping the d4 pawn defended. If knight takes e4 here, then we'll just take it and go knight e5. And win the exchange, which is obviously good for white. So Stockfish plays bishop b6, and now e5. AlphaZero feels it can't keep the 2 pawns as they are, so moves on to e5. But that's pretty decent, because that pawn on e5, disrupts the black knight, and also eyes that d6 square, which would be a nice outpost for the knight. Now, for the moment, Stockfish doesn't need to move the knight on f6, plays knight c7. Because e takes f6 allows rook takes e3. So king h1 and knight d5 and bishop g1.
So this is the position I was talking about in the intro, where it really does look like black's got a very good blockade of the central pawns, and it's not quite clear that white's any better, and the engines are evaluating this as pretty equal. Although when the engines played it out, both the games we have in this give white the win. So both AlphaZero playing white and then Stockfish playing against Fat Fritz.
Yeah, it's maybe one of those deceptive positions. I mean, black's beautifully. Black's mobilized in a very nice way and blockading the pawn on d4. But it's somehow it seems to be hard for black to make progress from there on. And that happened in both the games. I mean, I'll just show you the Stockfish Fat Fritz one, just how it started. I mean, these are fast games, remember, so it's, I think that I played them with 10 minutes and 5 seconds increment. So, we're not making any claims about relative engine strength or whatever. It's just out of interest just to see two completely different engines playing against each other from interesting positions. And, well, what happened with Stockfish here, you just saw that knight comes into f5. This is a typical tactic that we also see in the AlphaZero game, actually, that if 0 takes here, then knight f6 check. And then knight f5, and after rook d8, knight fd6. And you just say, well, somehow white managed to make a great deal more progress in this position than black did. Black's still solid, but white seems to have, just got his knights into good position. Basically, as the game proceeded, Stockfish managed to keep on turning this into a bigger and bigger advantage. I mean, I've said this a number of times, but just to reiterate, playing two different types of engines, like an NN like Leela or Fat Fritz, which is also basically Leela, against Stockfish at fast time controls from interesting positions. It's a wonderful, really wonderful way to get a nice feel for the position, and often you get positions like this where you say, the engines think that in general it's equal, and they might be right, but who could I play this more easily for, white or black? Well, just play your engines and just see, is it the tactical monster Stockfish that gets all the points, or is the more strategical Leela, Fat Fritz, is that making a good score there? Because if it's the latter case, then probably a human would make a decent score too. That's the thinking behind playing games like that. So the game continues, and let's have a look. Oh, sorry, that was the. Oh, good lord, I'm going all over the place here. That was the Stockfish Fat Fritz game. So let's have a look at the AlphaZero game here. Sorry, it's here. Bishop g1, rook d8. So knight e4. Rook f8, just getting out of the way of knight d6, queen c2. So AlphaZero is redeploying its queen there. Wasn't doing much on a4 anymore. So now it's, if you chase a knight away from f6, the b1 h7 diagonal's weak. So that's where h7 has been e1, bishop c7, just stopping the knight getting into d6. Both sides, just keeping things together here. a3, a useful move to stop knight b4. And possibly also looking for b2 to b4 as well, to stop black from playing this c5 break against the white centre. Knight e7, h3, bishop f5, king h2, a few consolidating moves. I'm not... Stockfish seems to be reasonably happy with its next move. I wasn't completely sure about knight g6. I would have said, to be honest, that if I was looking for a plan for black, I'd probably be looking to try and play f6 at some stage. It's a little bit tricky, and you've got to judge it. But that would be the sort of thing where I'd say, maybe after a move like bishop c7, maybe now play f6. That's the sort of thing that I'd be saying, well, at least I'm doing something in this position. The way that Stockfish plays it here, well, it gives AlphaZero this possibility to grab the light squared bishop, which is always on the cards, but it seems to happen here in quite a nice way. So knight g5, rook f5. This tactic that we saw in the, funnily enough, in the Stockfish Fat Fritz game, that after queen f5, we go knight f6 check, picking up the queen. So knight takes c4 and queen takes c4.
So white has the bishop pair now.
Yeah, and AlphaZero, its evaluation has crept up, and when it started, it was on 51.3%, and now it's gone right up to 57.1%.
There's still only a slight edge in AlphaZero's eyes.
Exactly, just only a slight edge. It's just, intuitively, just look at it just from sight. Obviously, with the two bishops, you sort of feel that that might give me some chances to do some stuff. I think that's the. Whereas for black, it's a little bit harder to think. How exactly is black going to play? If black isn't going to get his c6 to c5 break in, then yeah, it's not 100% clear.
It also looks like the H pawn might come in for white.
Ooh, yeah. Wouldn't be surprised. So, rook f1, knight e7. So, Stockfish playing quite sensibly, playing around, its outposts. Here comes the H pawn. First thing I think is that it's giving the bishop on the light squared bishop a nice extra little bit of scope there. It also means that now after f6, white can think about playing e5 to e6, and it will be the pawn will be supported by the bishop. So rook d3. I mean, again, AlphaZero, kind of in its element in this sort of position, because it's got a basic position. It just has to improve the position of its pieces all over the place. So here, just a little teasing move actually, and we saw this in this previous video, which we mentioned on smooth endgame play, where AlphaZero's got a light squared bishop, the opponent hasn't. So it's trying to get the opponent to put pawns on dark squares to weaken up those light squares. So looking for b7 to b6, but Stockfish is clever, of course, doesn't allow that. Rook comes back to f3, and now black feels has to play f6 to cover that attack on f7. Well, fine. AlphaZero just keeps on manoeuvring. Queen e2, just stopping the black queen from getting into d2. And all of a sudden, you notice that this queen on h6 looks a bit odd. Somehow, imperceptibly, it's just gone to a not fantastic place. And AlphaZero will make some use of that actually, because first of all, this move b4. Stopping c6 to c5, maybe looking to play b4 to b5, just to weaken up the black queen side and get some entry points. So black plays a6 just to stop that. And then this move bishop f5. What is bishop f5 aiming for? Well, that move bishop f5, white can aim for two things. Either just move the bishop back to b1, and then it could have this idea of playing rook f5 to h5, just embarrassing this queen on h6, and the pawn on h7 and the king on h8 behind it. Or white could also look at playing bishop e4, just trying to remove that knight on d5 when the defense of f6 will be much more difficult. So possibilities, just possibilities to keep on improving your position. So after knight c7, which is what Stockfish played, I mean, attacking that pawn on d4, basically. Well, actually, AlphaZero's evaluation increases an awful lot here. It plays the move bishop e3 and queen c4, and I think the reason that it likes that move is that that bishop on g1, which was rather, passive, I suppose you'd say, although providing a useful function, that suddenly gets a chance to leap into the game. And if there's one thing that AlphaZero does seem to love, it's optimizing its pieces, increasing the scope of its pieces. And
it's going to redeploy to the long diagonal.
Exactly.
At black's king.
Exactly. And somehow Stockfish doesn't seem to, probably Stockfish, thinks that's not such a big deal. In any case, it's seemingly, kind of repeating some moves at times, playing the knight back to c7 and back to d5. I mean, essentially finding it hard to find a plan, whereas, AlphaZero seems to be brimming with ideas in this position. That queen's been, removed from h6, so it's safer, but obviously g8 is not a great spot for the queen. Rook d3. Stockfish keeps on attacking that pawn on d4, but AlphaZero keeps on managing to switch its pieces around that it can defend it without too much problem. And now AlphaZero's probably pretty happy by now, moving its h-pawn forwards. I'm sure you can guess where that one's going.
It's going to keep on going.
It's going to keep on going. So g6 from Stockfish, bishop h3, and f5, trying to block out that light squared bishop. So yeah, I mean the light squared bishop now has become much less active. However, in those cases, that's what's so wonderful when you got the two bishops. If the opponent blocks one a colour of square, then the other one becomes exposed. So the bishop comes round to c1. eyeing those g5 and h6 squares. Rook d7, queen d1, another nice threatening move actually, just protecting that pawn on d4. So now if black moves the knight away from d5, the pawn on d4 won't be attacked. So white's basically a move ahead then when white finally decides to take some action. So a5 takes, and now h6. That's the one we like.
I think it's completely contained.
Indeed, 73.3% expected score for white here, so increasing all the time. Yeah, I mean simply the black king is restricted. There's going to be back rank mate threats, and we're still not very close to seeing any counterplay from black. I mean, just remember now that if black plays something like c5, for example, and then rook takes c5, we've got moves like like bishop b2. Simply because of the weakness of the king, that's all been exposed by this pawn on h6. So here Stockfish played this move bishop d8, which looks very reasonable, covering the dark squares. But now AlphaZero's evaluation jumps to 80.9%, which is starting to get serious as it plays g4. Because this move g4, it just means that it's not going to be just white's dark squared bishop that's active, but after this move f4, g5, it's the light squared bishop that's active again. So it's just a bit like, for black, it's like squashing jelly, really. I mean, just anything black does tries to keep the light squared bishop under wraps. The dark squared bishop gets active. You try and get the light squared bishop active. You try and get the dark squared bishop under wraps, and the light squared bishop gets active. It's just well, that's the beauty of the two bishops, of course. And rook g1, very calm move. And well, white's got the pawn on h6. It's defended now by the pawn on g5. Light squared bishop is active, and well, we've got a pawn on f4 as a target as well. And of course, e5 to e6 is another idea for white to get active. So, well, Stockfish plays knight e3, hoping that the white will exchange off his dark squared bishops, because then the pawns on d4 and e5 would get very loose. But Stockfish just isn't, AlphaZero just isn't bothering. It's going to exchange off the queen, which was well, a very good defender of the light squares. So now these are even more weak. And well, I mean, we're going to work out a way to get at that f4 pawn, maybe even something like rook e1 to e2 to f2, for example. Or in this type of position, I'm looking at it actually, even taking on e3 now gets quite tempting, because especially with the black queen no longer there to defend entry points on the f-file. Anyway, in any case, Stockfish decided that the situation was getting desperate. It needed to start trying to loosen up the white position and hopefully try and get some of those pawns that are on the dark squares. But yeah, this remains an extremely unpleasant position. I mean, just when after rook takes b7, you notice just how useful it is for white to have put a pawn onto h6. If this pawn was still on h4 or something like that, then well, you'd be looking at it and saying, yeah, it's dangerous, but the black king's still got room. Whereas with h6, this just gives this this white rook square on g7, and the black king's incredibly restricted. I mean,
this gives white more scope now with its passed a pawn, because all black's pieces are a little bit cramped behind the white position.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the a pawn's a big one for white now. So rook c7, rook b8, rook f8, king h1. I think probably the last accurate move, really, for AlphaZero, just getting out of the way of any random discovered checks on the dark squares. It's just AlphaZero continues to build up its position, and I mean it's just AlphaZero now thinks it's completely winning, and I think that yeah, I mean my certainly my Stockfish engine was getting close to a +10 evaluation for white, which is well the sort of sign to resign, basically. Yeah, I mean black's problem is that simply just incredibly tied down. Just very, very hard to think of anywhere in which black is going to be able to increase its position. This move with rook e1, white's looking now to bring its king into the game. So king g1, f2, f3, when that happens, the f4 pawn is doomed as well. So Stockfish exchanges off the rooks, just tries to create a little bit of confusion to there. But well, this move brings the rook back, and now the king is ready to come into f2. Just before it does that here, a little bit of playing around, played a5, and here actually Stockfish resigned this position. His valuation dropped so far that it considered the position was resignable. What's White's plan? White's simply going to play king f3, and then probably end up moving this bishop f1, bishop to f1, and then threatening bishop b5, just actually winning a piece because the rook can't move from c6. And well, I mean, if the knight has to move, then White will manage to push its a pawn through to queen. And of course, you know, on the king's side, the king's completely tied down, so there's even back rank mate threats in there as well. Again, you know, for a human, you probably you know, still have a tiny little bit of stress, still winning this, but for engines, these sort of games are trivial. All right, that was the game. I mean, I hope you enjoyed that. A bit of a longer one, that one, but I hope it was worth it. I think it's just you know, useful to see the whole game. You know, you could stop at this opening position, you know, and just say, oh, and White's just got a little edge. But I think it's very nice to see in practice, you know, who found it easier to play from this position, White or Black. And just from the games we've seen anyway, it seems that the White's got a nice time. You know, just with the outpost on d6 and well, opportunities to play both knights towards that square, and also to make use of the open f file. And also, I think that this opening novelty, knight e1. I mean, it doesn't win or anything like that. I mean, it's you're only playing from this type of position, you know, for a small edge with White. But it really does hit all the right notes, really, in terms of getting rid of this pawn, trying to exploit the exposed position of the queen, you know, gain some tempi, and also make sure that this knight on c2 gets into the game. And of course, slightly funny that you know, that somehow the knight, after being developed on there on move 3, it takes 6 moves before it you know, it's back there again. But yeah, it's Black's also wasted time with the queen, so it's not just one way in terms of wasting tempi. Okay then, well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't subscribed to our channel and you like our videos,
then hit the red button.
Hit the red button, indeed. And then yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen Game Changer, our book about AlphaZero, then it's a great read. Do take a look. Very good reading material in these quarantine times. And otherwise, keep on watching. We've got lots more planned. Loads of interesting AlphaZero games. And also from time to time we dip into other things like the Computer World Championship going on at the moment, which is very, very interesting. And if you like different games, from time to time we look at shogi as well. So, okay, thanks very much for watching.
Thank you very much.